Want to get started with today's episode and open up with Juwan Johnson, who absolutely should want to undergo the position change to tight end. It's no question to me. So at 6'4", 230, he just needs to bulk up a little bit in terms of the weight side of that conversation. But if he does that, he would be a pretty good fit for the Saints at tight end in terms of what their prototype might be. Now, the reason why I say that this would be a really good opportunity for Juwan Johnson is simply that the wide receiver room is really crowded with players that meet the same type of potential that he does, right? Lil Jordan Humphrey, kind of the same type of player that Juwan Johnson is, a bigger guy that can also block, that can play special teams, but has actually a little bit of giddy up after when he gets the ball in his hands, surprisingly, as we've seen in a couple of preseason moments. But look, he's somebody, Juwan Johnson, that kind of can fade into the background a little bit when you have other guys who can also block in the run game, who can play in line like Traquan Smith can, who can catch contested passes, which is something that Juwan Johnson has struggled with. It's going to be a little bit tough for him to separate himself from this wide receiver room that includes those two names that we just mentioned, in Lil Jordan Humphrey as well as Traquan Smith, but also Marquez Callaway, who packs much of the same punch, and some very dynamic players like Deontay Harris and the newly drafted Kwan Baker, who are going to be coming in this season as well, along with Jalen McCleskey, who signed this offseason. So when you look at where Juwan Johnson can set himself apart amongst the wide receivers, it's a little bit tougher, but he might be able to help to set himself apart when it comes to playing the tight end role as a pass catcher. Now, I mentioned that Juwan Johnson struggled with contested catches. He did that particularly his final year in college, 33% contested catch rate. Not great for a guy that's 6'4", but if you can get him in there and get some work done with him and help him improve in that category, that could certainly help him when it comes to being a tight end. But if you look at his relative athletic score, which you know that the Saints care very much about when it comes to the NFL draft, Johnson's wide receiver RAS score is 6.5, basically. But then when you transition him over to the tight end position and you compare his combine numbers to tight ends over the last several years, then you bump him up to a 7.74. So he ends up bumping up there and being elite, specifically in the speed category where he ran a 4.58 coming into the NFL. He also had a 33-inch leap, so he was able to kind of bolster himself in terms of explosiveness as well. But again, it was the size, particularly his weight, that ended up notching him down, and then only the 14 bench reps, but that tends to happen when you have long arms. So if they can bulk him up, or if that might be what he's focusing on here over the course of the offseason to help with that transition, that should pay dividends for him in terms of being able to catch on with the team, not just as a practice squad member, but potentially as the third, maybe even second tight end, depending upon how Nick Van Ette pans out in this offense. Now, Juwan Johnson will still have competition there, right? He'll be playing a natural tight end, or he'll be sort of battling a natural tight end like Dylan Sainer, who's coming in as an undrafted free agent out of Iowa State, who fits very much the Iowa State Josh Hill mold, but can do a little bit extra as well as a pass catcher. So it's still going to be tough, right? It doesn't make the journey easy for Juwan Johnson, but certainly competing at the tight end position where there are so many sort of unknowns at the position right now in terms of the players that are in that tight end room and in that position room, it does make it a little bit easier than what he would experience trying to battle his way through a very crowded wide receiver room at the moment.